People love the word freedom the same way they love slogans. They repeat it, salute it, but never stop and ask what it really means. Freedom is not a slogan or a holiday, okay? It doesn't look like an extended weekend at your Uncle Kenny's lake house, shotgunning beers with your buddies while shooting off bottle rockets and riding jet skis. It is the absence of ownership by anyone else. If someone can command your body, your money, or your mind, you are not free. Now, you can decorate the cage however you want, but regardless, it's still a cage. And yeah, sure, we are told that we're free because we can choose. Yeah, we can choose from menus written by the same owners. I mean, yeah, you can pick between Pepsi or Coke, Democrat or Republican, Google or Apple. The names and logos change. Yeah, sure, but the product doesn't. It still serves the same owners. George Carlin, he hit the nail on the head years ago. You don't have real choices. You have the illusion of choice. The game is fixed. The game is rigged. Besides, most of what we call choice, it only exists within boundaries someone else designed. I mean, for example, yeah, you're free to speak until you say something that exposes a lie too profitable to question. And yeah, you're free to vote between two wings of the same predatory bird. No matter which you choose, the red or the blue, the elephant or the donkey, the state will still take the product of your labor and call it the price of living in a civil society. They will still bury the country in debt and then make you responsible for the interest. That is not representation. Representation is just a euphemism for extortion. And yeah, you're free to live however you want, if what you want keeps the machine running. And the world absolutely cares what you believe. These corporations, they spend billions and billions of dollars to manufacture those beliefs. Every streaming service, every screen, every classroom, every algorithm trains you to mistake obedience for virtue. Once they condition you to believe the lie willingly, the system no longer needs chains to restrain you. Real freedom begins the moment you stop asking what you're allowed to do. There is no permission slip for self-ownership. There is no safety net. There is no outsourcing your responsibility. Nobody writes your script. Nobody guarantees the ending. Every choice carries your name on it. And yeah, the system can punish you for refusing to conform, sure. But it can't make you believe the lie unless you surrender your mind. And long before modern propaganda existed, Nietzsche, he saw this. He said most people build their morality around fear. They don't seek truth. They seek approval. In their programmed minds, submission equates responsibility and conformity to good manners. I mean, what it really is domestication. But the individual who thinks for himself exposes that domestication. And the herd hates it, calls him dangerous. The rare man who writes his own code becomes immune to manipulation. He no longer measures right and wrong by majority vote. That kind of man doesn't wait for permission because he knows no one has the authority to give it. And the crowd will call him names, call him arrogant because his independence reminds them of their obedience. Dostoevsky, he understood clearly why the herd stays like that way. In the Grand Inquisitor, he showed that people fear freedom more than tyranny. It's crazy. Freedom means uncertainty. And, most people, they will trade uncertainty for comfort any day of the week. You promise them food and safety and someone to blame. Shoot, yeah, they'll hand over every decision you could ever make for them. I mean, modern life is that trade. Jobs and a consistent paycheck, if you can find a job now, curated news, entertainment on demand, you name it, everything to keep you docile and calm while someone else decides where the fruits of your labor goes. And most will call that civilization. I call that captivity. Solzhenitsyn, he proved you don't need bars to be imprisoned. He watched entire populations obey absurdities because honesty was dangerous. The state didn't need to outlaw truth. It only had to make truth costly for the individual. Once honesty risks your income or your reputation, most people lie automatically. They post what is safe. They speak what protects them. And the lie survives because everyone repeats it together in unison. A society dies the moment truth becomes a liability. Every time you repeat what you know is false to stay comfortable, you reinforce the cage. Every time you stay silent while others are punished for speaking the truth, you agree to your own limits. Freedom ends with consent. Marcus Aurelius turned the question inward. External control is inevitable. Internal control is a choice. A man who cannot govern his own reactions will always be ruled by those who can provoke him. The world dangles fear and pleasure in front of you like levers. And if you bite, you are a puppet. Stoicism is not apathy. It is the refusal to be programmed and react to it. The man who can master himself cannot be ruled. And Carl Jung, he finished the equation. He said, no one is free while pretending to be innocent. Every human has a shadow. They have a shadow, and that's the side that wants power, sex, respect, revenge, you name it. The system trains you to deny that side so it can use it against you. The anger that you suppress is redirected into your productivity for the machine. The anger that you bury, it becomes obedience. Integrate it. If you do that, you become unpredictable, self-directed instead of programmed. That is why the world needs men docile and safe. A man who owns his full nature doesn't need supervision. Freedom then is not permission, it is rejection. It is the refusal to obey what you know is wrong. It is the decision to accept risk rather than live by lies. It is the self-ownership. It is self-ownership, not collective comfort. Most men will never choose it. They want guarantees. They want to be told what good looks like and be rewarded for meeting the preset standard. True freedom gives you no rewards. It only gives you yourself. Nothing more, nothing less. The cost is isolation. You will be misunderstood. You will lose invitations to get-togethers. You will stop fitting into roles designed for the compliant. But what you gain cannot be taken away. The ability to act without waiting, to speak without fear, to think without permission. You are not free because you can pick from their menu. You are free when you can walk away from it and still feed yourself. You are not free because you can complain online. You are free because you can live according to truth and accept the consequences, whatever they may be. You are not free because you vote. You are free when you no longer need masters at all. Freedom isn't granted, it's claimed. And the moment that you claim it, every system built on control will mark you as the problem, guaranteed. And that right there is the proof that you finally did something right. Freedom does not come with applause. Sorry to disappoint. It comes with silence, with the sound of no orders being given. The first thing you notice when you stop obeying is how quiet it gets. No one tells you what to do next. And that silence scares most people back into line because they mistake noise for safety. They think guidance equals meaning. And the truth is, the noise only hides their dependence. A man who insists on thinking for himself learns very quickly that most debates are rituals of control. The goal is not to reach truth, it is to shame you into conformity. The moment you question the premise, you're called an extremist, right? The moment that you refuse to participate in the illusion, you're called antisocial. That's how control survives, by pathologizing independence. I mean, going back to Nietzsche, he called it the morality of the herd. Obey and you're deemed safe and virtuous. Doubt and you're an outcast. The herd punishes difference because difference exposes choice. If one man can live honestly without permission, everyone else could too. And that destroys the excuse of necessity. The system has no defense against the individual who stops believing in it. Freedom begins when you realize that the state, the company, the culture, all of it exists only because people keep obeying. They write the rules, but they can't enforce them without your participation. You're the lifeblood that keeps the heart of the system pumping. Every act of blind compliance is a small tax paid to tyranny. Every voluntary lie, it keeps the gears turning. Stop feeding it. Stop feeding it, and the heart of the machine is crippled. That's what Solzhenitsyn meant when he said to live not by lies. And he didn't mean start a revolution. He meant stop pretending. Refuse to say 2 + 2 = 5 just to fit in. Refuse to call theft policy. Refuse to call censorship safety. You don't need to fight the system. You need to withdraw your belief in it. The empire of illusion collapses when enough people stop pretending it's real. Marcus Aurelius, he would tell you that the only thing that's truly yours is your judgment. Everything else, whether that's money, reputation, or your property, can be taken from you. What you believe cannot, unless you sell it. That's why the system buys belief with comfort. It tells you submission is maturity and that obedience is cooperation and taxation is civilization. Once you agree, you belong to it. You've signed your life away. Carl Jung, he warned what happens when you disown the parts of yourself that refuse to kneel. They don't go away. All they do is they rot and they come back as resentment. A man who hides his power becomes envious of anyone who uses theirs. A culture that punishes strength breeds weakness and sees that as moral. The more you suppress what makes you capable, the easier you are to rule. A free man does not suppress his will. He directs it properly. He uses his anger to protect truth and his ambition to build. His aggression to defend what is rightfully his. He doesn't beg for permission to be himself. That is the kind of man who is impossible to program. Freedom is the recognition that no one is born with the right to rule over another. There is no mystical class of humans who have the right to command others. Laws are just threats wrapped in paperwork. Authority is the superstition that some signatures can turn wrong into right. The moment you stop believing that, you stop being a subject. Now look at the language of control, permit, license, regulation, policy. All of it says the same thing. You may act, but only if we approve. Real freedom is acting on your own moral judgment without waiting for signatures. That is freedom. Most people don't want freedom, though. They want managed safety. They want to be told, what the rules are so they can play for prizes. They trade the unknown for comfort, and they call that a bargain. That's why each generation gains convenience but loses autonomy. Privacy is stripped away, dependence deepens, and people point to the new technology of the day, of the era, and mistake it for freedom. Freedom is costly precisely because it removes excuses. When you are free, failure is yours, and yours alone. When you are unfree, failure belongs to the system. That's why dependency feels comforting. It keeps your conscience clean. You can blame the boss. You can blame the market, the government, God, anyone but yourself. Freedom strips away that luxury. It leaves you with accountability. And accountability feels like danger. But it's the only path to not only freedom, but self-respect. A man who obeys out of fear can never respect himself, no matter how much he earns or how admired he becomes. Respect comes from self-direction, from knowing your choices are your own, even when they cost you. In freedom, it isn't a utopia where everyone just suddenly decides to do the right thing. It's the point where morality stops being outsourced. Of course, you still face greed, failure, and selfishness, yours included, but you choose to act decently without needing a threat to make you. You do what's right because it aligns with who you are, not because someone's watching you. That's what separates a free man from a managed one. The system sells an easier version. It tells you just follow orders and you'll be good. It rewards obedience and calls it virtue. That's why compliance has replaced morality as the national religion. But morality backed by threat isn't morality at all. It's conditioning. People behave to avoid punishment, not because they believe in what they're doing. I mean, if you need permission to do what you know is right, you're not moral, you're domesticated. And freedom, by contrast, is messy. Yeah, it produces risk, error, and unequal outcomes. But it also produces creativity, courage, and truth. The controlled world wants sameness because sameness is predictable. Freedom destroys predictability, and that terrifies rulers. Predictability is profit. Freedom is uncertainty. When you finally step outside their definitions, you realize how small their world actually was. They kept you busy with politics and gossip and work so that you never stop and ask the only question that matters. Who owns me? Who owns me? If the answer is anyone but you, you're not free. You don't reclaim freedom by voting harder or protesting louder. You reclaim it by withdrawing obedience. You stop funding what you know is wrong. You stop defending what you know is false. You stop pretending the cage is civilized. Each refusal is a brick removed from the wall. This is why every genuine act of independence is punished, not because it harms another or harms others, but because it exposes the fraud. If even one person can live without their approval, the myth of authority falls apart. That's why free thinkers are labeled threats. The state fears your example. Because if one stands up, then they all might stand up. Freedom is not given, it's taken, and only from within. You don't tear down institutions with force, you make them irrelevant. The moment people stop believing that one group has the right to control another, the entire illusion of authority dissolves on its own. Real strength doesn't come from people with badges or titles. It comes from ordinary men and women who decide to stop backing what they know is wrong and start backing each other instead. When you stop granting moral authority to anyone outside yourself, you will be free. And yeah, you might still face punishment, but punishment without legitimacy is just crime wearing a badge. Yeah, they can cage your body, but not your will. That is what every tyrant fears, a population that sees through the costume, that understands there is no such thing as a rightful master. Freedom doesn't come from systems. It comes from refusal. It doesn't come from permission. It comes from understanding. It begins when you stop asking, what am I allowed to do? And start asking, what is right? And then act on the answer regardless of the cost. That's the only change that's ever real. When enough people decide they won't pretend anymore. And that's why real freedom will never have a crowd. It demands courage when fear is easier, and honesty when lies pay better, and accountability when excuses are free. Most people will turn away from that weight. But the few who don't, who take full ownership of their own lives, stop confusing quiet compliance with peace.